My hands were shaking when the alien fleet broke through our outer defense line. And GT, music. And GT, not from fear, from rage. I had just watched a ship full of human diplomats get shoved aside like a toy by a vessel 10 times its size, and the laughter coming through our communication channels was the worst part. Music. They were laughing at us. Real, mocking, cruel laughter broadcast on every open frequency, so every human ear in the system would hear it. My name is Captain Music, Daniel Briggs, commander of the human exploration ship Northwind, and that day, in the year 2387, was the day I learned music, how small the galaxy thought we were. We had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. Earth had finally music cracked the mystery of faster than light travel, thanks to a brilliant young scientist named Holly Whitfield. Her engine bent space in ways music nobody thought possible. We built 5 ships. We trained crews. We rehearsed first contact 100 different ways. Every speech I had memorized, every diplomatic phrase music I had practiced in my mirror, every careful gesture meant to show peace and goodwill, all of it died the moment those music alien ships appeared. There were 9 of them, long, sleek, and silver. Each one music looked like a knife pointed at our hearts. They surrounded our small fleet within seconds, moving in ways that should have been impossible. One moment they were a star away, the next they were close enough to touch. Their technology made music ours look like a child's bicycle next to a racing car. Then came the message, the translator on my console flickered, struggled, and music finally produced words. Voice that came through was deep and slow, almost lazy music, as if the speaker was bored just looking at us. Small things, hairless small things in metal music boxes. How quaint. We have not seen a species this primitive try to leave its system in 3,000 years. I gripped the arm music of my command chair so hard my knuckles turned white. Beside me, my first officer, a steady woman named Music, Grace Bellamy, gave me a look that said, "Stay calm." She was right. I forced air into my lungs and pressed the reply music button. "This is Captain Daniel Briggs of the human ship Northwind. We come in peace. We seek to introduce ourselves to the wider galaxy and form bonds of friendship." The laughter that followed music lasted almost a full minute. It was joined by other voices, other species, all listening on shared channels. They were laughing together at us. I could hear at least 7 different alien languages laughing in 7 different ways. Some sounded like clicks, some sounded like wind, one sounded like glass music breaking. All of them carried the same meaning, mockery, pure, complete, unbothered mockery. When the laughter finally settled, the deep voice spoke again. "I am Ambassador Vorlag of the Carlton Music Conquer. I represent 7 elder species who have ruled this region for longer than your sun has burned. We have observed your little world for some time. We watched you discover music. Fire, we watched you discover steam. We watched you discover electricity. We placed bets music on whether you would manage atomic power before destroying yourselves. I lost that bet sadly. I owed my colleague 300 years of her favorite music, wine. My crew was frozen at their stations. Holly Whitfield, music, who I had brought along as our chief science officer, was staring at her screen with an expression music somewhere between shock and fury. She had spent her whole life believing humans were special. To hear an alien speak of us like we were ants, music in a glass jar was crushing. Sorry. I did not let myself crumble. I straightened my shoulders. Music. Ambassador, we are willing to learn from older species. We seek partnership, not pity. Partnership, Vorsh repeated the word. Came back wrapped in another wave of soft chuckles, music from the listening fleet. Little captain, partnerships are formed between equals. You are not our equal. You may in time become music, something resembling a civilized species. For now you will return to your world. You will accept our terms. You will not leave your home system without permission, and you will be grateful, music, that we are merciful enough to let you keep breathing. A second voice joined, now sharper, higher, almost hissing. I propose music. We name them the conquered. Names lesser species when they enter our space. It helps the records keep music clean. A fine idea, Vorsh agreed. There was a pause, then Vorsh announced, with theatrical seriousness, we name your species the Cradlings, music. Children of the cradle, may you grow up someday. Cradlings, they named us like pets. Holly Snort stood up at her station. Captain, I have to say something. Music. I shook my head once sharp. Stand down. Doctor. But Captain, music, they are insulting. I said stand down. Holly sat. Her hands were trembling on her console. Music. I understood. I felt the same shame burning through my chest, but I had read enough history to know what music happens when small powers shout at giants. They get crushed. We were the small power. I had to swallow music. This, I had to accept this. I had to bring my crew home alive. The terms came across music, our screens and writing. They were brutal. We would accept what they called provisional sapient status, which meant we had no voice and no vote. We would not develop weapons beyond a fixed music level. We would allow conquered observers to land on Earth and live among us. We would teach them our languages, music, our biology, our history, while they taught us almost nothing in return. The probation music period was 400 years, 4 centuries before we would even be allowed to speak in their council. I read every line. My jaw was tight, enough to crack stone. I signed music. What else could I do? As I signed the last document with my biometric thumbprint, Vorlag spoke again, almost kindly this time, the way a man might speak to music, a clever dog. You did well, little captain. You showed wisdom. Most primitive species, music, fight us at this point. They die quickly. You will live to bring your people the news. Thank you, Ambassador, I said through teeth. Music that felt locked shut. As a parting gift, we will provide you with a star map of your local sector. You may find it useful. Try not to break anything important while you explore music, your tiny corner. The galaxy is older and stranger than your soft minds can imagine. Goodbye, music, Captain Briggs of the Cradlings. The connection cut. The 9 silver music ships peeled away, vanishing into folds of space, leaving us alone with our shame and a single data file glowing on my main screen. The bridge was silent. Music for a long time. Holly was crying quietly. Grace was music, breathing slowly through her nose, the way she did when she was trying not to break something. The other crew members stared at their stations as music if afraid to look at each other. I cleared my throat, set course for Earth, bring the rest of our fleet into formation, we are going home. Yes, Captain, Grace said softly. As the ship turned, I opened the map file. It was a detailed three-dimensional chart of every system within 50 light years of Earth. Stars, planets, ancient travel routes. Names. The names were written music in the Concord's own script with our translation provided beside each entry. I stared at the names for a long time. Something about them was wrong. Something about them was tugging at the back of my mind in a way I could not explain. I called Holly to my ready room an hour later. Music, she came in with red eyes and a stiff back. I sat her down and turned music, the star map, toward her. Doctor, look at these names, read them out loud. She frowned and began. Arata Minda. Music, Sapara, Eridu, Nimrud. Anunnaki. She stopped, her face went pale. Captain, these are not alien words. What are they? They are old, they are very old. Arata is close to Arata, a lost city from ancient Sumerian texts, music. Sapara is a real ancient Sumerian city. Eridu, also known as Uruk, is where music writing was invented on Earth. Nimrud is an Assyrian word. Anunnaki is shockingly close to music. Anunnaki, the so-called gods of ancient Mesopotamia. I felt cold spread through my stomach. Could it be a coincidence? Music. 6 names that sound like ancient Earth. Names by accident. Holly shook her head. No, the pattern is too strong, and look here, the Concord assigned symbols to each system. These symbols, music, Captain, I have seen these symbols before. In museums they appear on tablets that are 5,000 music years old. We sat there in silence. The north wind music hummed around us. Outside the small window of my ready room, the stars stretched away into music, infinity. And somewhere out there a Kalon ambassador was probably still chuckling about the cradle music children he had just put in their place. But in my ready room, something else was happening. A door was cracking, music open in the back of my mind, a door I had not known was there. Why would aliens, music, who had never visited Earth in any official record, name 40 stars after cities and gods that humans had stopped writing about thousands of years ago? Why would their oldest charts carry words that should belong only to music? Dusty clay tablets in our museums. Holly looked at me. Her eyes were wide. The tears were gone now, replaced by something far stronger, curiosity. The kind of curiosity that drives a scientist to ignore food and sleep until she finds the truth. Captain, I think they made a mistake giving us this map. What kind of mistake? I think they showed us something they did not realize we could read. I leaned back in my chair. The hum of the music engine seemed louder now. My pulse was a slow, heavy drum. Then we keep this music quiet, I said. Nobody outside this room sees this analysis until we are home. Not the crew, not Earth Command, just you, me, and Grace. Music, we need to think carefully before we move. Yes, Captain. Music. She left. I sat alone with the star map. For a long while, the Kalon thought they had named us cradlings, children of the cradle. And GT, music. And GT, they thought they had put us in our place. They had handed us a treaty designed to keep us small for 400 years. And they had laughed in our faces while We signed it, and then, almost as an afterthought, like a man tossing music scraps to a hungry dog, Ambassador Vorsh had handed us a map covered in music, words from our own forgotten past. I did not yet know what that meant. I did not yet understand the size of the secret music hiding in those names. I only knew, sitting there in my ready room with my hands no longer shaking, that the laughter would not last music forever. The galaxy thought it knew us. The galaxy music was wrong. And as I stared at the name Anunnaki, glowing softly on the screen, a strange feeling settled in my chest, not anger anymore, not shame, something quieter. Music, something older. It felt almost like recognition, like coming home. I pressed the intercom button. Dr. Whitfield, when we reach Earth, I want a full archaeological music team prepared. We are going to take a closer look at one of these systems, specifically music, the one named Anunnaki. Understood, Captain. I cut the line and turned the map slowly with my finger. 40 stars, 40 names, 40 whispers from a past nobody on Earth had explained yet. We were going to find out why. I just did not know that night how big the answer would turn out to be. The journey home took 9 days, 9 days of silence, 9 days of a crew trying to swallow their humiliation, 9 days of me staring at that map every spare hour, looking for more music, patterns, finding more of them every time. By the time we reached Earth orbit, I had stopped sleeping properly. I had stopped eating music, regular meals. I had become a man with a question burning in his mind. What were we really? And what had the elders of the galaxy forgotten? The lights of Earth filled my window. Music as we slid into orbit, blue, white, green, beautiful, familiar home. But everything looked different now. Music. Everything felt different. The planet I had grown up on was hiding something, or perhaps something was hiding music. Inside it, inside us, inside our blood. Our bones, music, our dead languages, and our forgotten myths. I turned away from the window music and went to prepare my report, the hardest report of my career. I had to tell Earth Command we had been mocked, named, and put on probation. I had to deliver shame to the leaders of 7 billion people. But I would also bring them a map full of secrets. And in 9 days of staring at music, that map, I had decided one thing. The Kelton Conquer had music, laughed at the wrong species. They just did not know it yet. The Earth Council music chamber had never been quieter. 47 elected leaders from every nation sat in a curved hall of dark stone and silver paneling, watching me deliver music, the worst news in human history. I had stood at podiums before. I had given speeches to crowds. None of that compared to this. The faces in front of music me were old and young, darkened, pale, expert and political, and every single one of them was holding their breath as I spoke music, the word probation. I told them everything. The 9 silver ships, the mockery music, the laughter on shared channels, the name cradlings, the 400-year sentence music, the fixed weapons limit, the observers who would soon land on Earth, and live music among us, watching us like scientists watch fish in a tank. I left nothing out. They deserved music. The truth. When I finished, an old woman near the front stood up. Her name was Counselor Margaret Doyle, and she had been in politics longer than I had been alive. Her voice was level. And GT, music. And GT, Captain Briggs, do we have any chance of fighting them? None, counselor. They moved through space in ways music, our science cannot yet explain. A single one of their ships could have ended our music entire fleet in seconds. I judged that surrender preserved more lives, music, than resistance. Then you judged correctly. Thank you for your service. Now sit down, music, and let us discuss what comes next. I sat, my legs were grateful. The chamber broke into argument almost immediately. Some counselors, music, wanted to accept the treaty fully and quietly grow stronger. Others wanted to refuse and prepare for war, even a war we could not win. A few demanded that music, we hide the entire incident from the public. The shouting went on for hours. I waited. I had not yet shared the second music part, the map, the names, the whispers from our buried past. When the chamber finally music quieted, I stood again. Counselors, there is more. I walked to the central display and opened the file. The star map, music, filled the room, glowing in 3 dimensions above the floor. 40 stars rotated slowly. Their names floated beside them in soft music, blue letters. This was given to us by Ambassador Vorch, music, as a parting insult, gesture meant to show how much greater their knowledge was than ours. Dr. Holly Whitfield, my chief scientist, and I spent the return journey studying it. Music, we have found something they did not intend us to find. I pointed to the names. These star names are not alien words. They are human words, ancient human words. They come from languages that died on Earth thousands of years before we built music, our first radio. The chamber went still. That is not possible, someone, music, called out. How could aliens know words from our dead languages? That is the question, I answered, and the answer matters. Holly stepped music forward. She had prepared a presentation. Her voice was steady now. The shame of the encounter, music, had transformed in her into fire, and that fire was knowledge. She walked the council through her findings. She showed them how Sapara on the alien map music matched Sapara in ancient Mesopotamian records, how Aratha matched Iratha, how Anunnaki was nearly identical to Anunnaki, the figures called sky beings in our oldest texts. She showed them how the symbols beside the star names, music, matched real symbols carved on real clay tablets, sitting in real museums in our cities. She projected photographs of the tablets, music beside the alien symbols. They were not similar, they were the same. Stroke for music, stroke. Curve for curve. Doctor, counselor, music, Doyle said carefully. Are you suggesting that aliens visited Earth thousands of years ago? I am suggesting something stranger. Music. Then that, counselor, I am suggesting that Earth visited the stars thousands music of years ago and then forgot. The chamber erupted. And GT, music. And GT, people shouted across each other. I let it happen. The truth needed time to music settle. When the noise dropped, Doyle spoke again. What do you propose? And GT, music. And GT, I proposed, I said, a quiet expedition, not a fleet, a single ship. Volunteer music crew. We travel to the system called Anunnaki on this map. We see what is there. If it is empty, we have lost nothing. If it is not empty, then we have found the most important music thing in human history. The council voted 29 to music, 18 in favor. 3 days later, the Northwind launched. Again, this time with a smaller, more focused crew. Holly Whitfield came as my chief scientist. Grace Bellamy stood again as my first officer, music. We added Professor Edmund Hartley, a leading expert on ancient civilizations, who had nearly fainted when music we showed him the alien symbols. We added Dr. Priya Bell, a geneticist, in case we found anything music biological. We added a small team of archaeologists, 24 people in total. We told the public we were running music scientific surveys near the edge of human space. Nobody outside the council music knew the truth. The Anunnaki system was 41 light years from Earth. With our new engine, the journey music took 6 days. During those 6 days, Hartley barely slept. He was obsessed with the names on the map. He filled 3 notebooks with music, cross-references between alien words and ancient texts. By day 4 he had music built a chart showing that at least 27 of the 40 alien star names matched sacred or mythological places from human history. "Captain," he said to me one evening over a cup of tea, "I have spent my whole career being laughed at. I wrote a book once arguing that some of our oldest myths might contain real memories of real events, deeply distorted by time. I was mocked. My students were embarrassed to say they studied under me, and now," he laughed almost a sob, "now an alien hands us a star map, and the old myths line up with it like a key. Music in a lock. You think we will find something at Anunnaki? I think, Captain, that we will find music, a memory we did not know we had lost." We arrived in the Anunnaki music system on the morning of the 7th day. It had a yellow star, similar to our own sun, just music slightly older. There were 5 planets. One of them sat in the warm zone where water could exist as a liquid. We pointed our sensors at music, that 4th planet. Holly's face went still as the data came back. "Captain, the music atmosphere is breathable. The surface has water. There are land masses. There is no music. Current civilization, but what? There are structures. And GT, music. And GT. She put the visual on the main screen. From orbit, we saw a desert music continent. Across the desert, half buried in sand, were lines, long, straight lines, curves, squares, the unmistakable shapes of a city, a huge city, dozens of square miles of ruined buildings, weathered down by what looked like thousands of centuries of wind. Hartley made a small sound. And GT, music. And GT, somewhere between a gasp and a prayer. "It is real," he whispered. "It is all real." We landed 3 days music later, after careful surveys to make sure the air was truly safe. The shuttle dropped onto a music flat stretch of stone outside the largest cluster of ruins. When the door opened, I stepped onto a planet no human, by official record, music had ever stood on before. Yet the moment my boot touched the ground, I felt something I cannot explain, recognition, as if my body remembered music, what my mind did not. Hartley stepped out behind me, then stopped. Tears were already on his face. "Music." Holly came next, then the others. We walked toward the ruins. "Music." The closer we got, the more impossible it became. The walls weathered though. The music showed clear signs of design, doorways, windows, courtyards, columns. Music, the proportions were familiar, the doorways were sized for beings roughly our height, the steps the right depth for human legs. The handholds carved into the walls fit human hands. Hartley climbed onto one of the walls and traced a carving with his fingers. "Captain," he called down, "come up here." I climbed up. He pointed to a worn carving. It showed music, two figures standing beside what looked like a tree. The figures had two arms, two legs, a head. They were unmistakably shaped. Music like us. Holly was already running spectroscopic scans on the stone. And GT, music. And GT. After a few minutes her face had drained of all color. "Captain, the minimum age of this site is music 800,000 years. 800,000, I repeated. Yes, music, and the construction is too uniform to be natural. Someone built this, someone shaped like us, someone with hands like ours and minds like ours. 800,000 years music ago." Hartley sat down on the wall and put his head in his hands. He did not cry. He laughed a soft, broken laugh. All those clay tablets, all those forgotten stories, music, they were not myths. They were memories. We spent 2 days surveying the surface ruins. We mapped streets that had once held traffic. Music of some kind. We found pottery shards. We found tools. We found a faded mural showing music. Star map badly damaged but recognizable. The center of the map. Music was a yellow star. Around it spun planets. The third planet from that star had a small mark beside it. That music. Hartley translated after hours of work as the home of the first ones. The third planet from that star. Music. Earth. That mural alone would have been enough to shake our species to its core, but we were not music done. On the third day, our deeper scans found something underground, a massive chamber, 200 music, below the largest ruined building. The walls of the chamber were lined with metal that had not corroded. In 800,000 years, the metal gave off a faint signal, a signal that pulsed every music 6 seconds, steady, patient, waiting. "It is calling." Music something, Holly whispered. "Or someone," Hartley added. We dug down. It took us 9 hours using our cutters carefully, descending through a shaft. We made music through softer rock beside the chamber. When we finally cut through the wall, our beams of light fell on something I will remember until the day I die. It was a vault, round, smooth, lined with metal that looked like polished black glass. In the center stood a single tall stone pillar, perhaps 3 m high. The pillar had music, no symbols on its surface, no carving, just smooth, dark stone. Music. In front of the pillar, set into the floor, was a panel. The panel had a small flat plate. The plate was clearly designed to be touched. I walked toward it. My team stayed back. Hartley was crying again. Holly held a scanner with shaking hands. "Captain," she said, "the plate is music reading us. It is scanning us. Specifically, it is reading our DNA. What music does it want?" "I cannot tell, but Captain, the lock on this vault, whatever it is keyed. It is keyed to a specific genetic profile." "Whose?" She looked at her scanner, then at me, then music at the plate. "Captain, it is keyed to human DNA. The chamber went silent except for the steady pulse of the signal. I stepped forward, music. I placed my palm on the plate. The pillar woke up. A soft glow filled the vault, blue and white swirling slowly inside the music stone. The pillar was no longer stone, it was something else, something that had only looked like stone for the comfort of those who would want music. Day return. As the glow brightened, a voice began to speak. The language was unknown to me. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. Hartley fell to his knees. He was the only one of us who recognized music. Any of it. That is, Captain, that is a language I once theorized existed, the root language, the mother of all our oldest tongues. It is older than Sumerian. Music, older than Sanskrit, older than anything, Captain, that voice is speaking Proto-Earth. Slowly our translator caught up, working with Hartley's music, notes from the journey. Words began to form on our screens, then sentences, then a message. It was a long message. And GT, music. And GT, as it played, our hearts hammered. Holly sank to her knees. Hartley wept openly. Now, I stood with my hands still on the plate, listening to a voice that had been waiting. And GT, music. And GT, 800,000 years for someone like me too. Come and turn it on. The first words of the message were simple. To the children who returned home, welcome back. We are sorry that we left you behind. The message continued. It told us a story. It told us we had a name once, a name we had forgot. We were called the Ivam. We had once spread across the stars. We had built worlds. We had seeded life music on younger planets. We had taught smaller species how to think and speak and dream. We had been the first travelers in a galaxy music that was still mostly dark. Then something happened to us. A sickness, the message called it, not a normal sickness, a sickness of the mind, brought on by a weapon made by enemies. During a war, we music no longer. Remember, the sickness made the Avam forget who they were. It scrambled their music memories, their language, their understanding of themselves. Within 3 generations, the great music Ivam civilization had collapsed. The starships rotted in their docks. The colonies went silent. The cities fell to dust. The few who survived on music, Earth, the cradle world as the message called it, were quarantined by the colonies that still functioned. They feared the sickness. They feared bringing it back to themselves, so they sealed Earth away. They watched music it from a distance for a few centuries, then slowly faded away themselves. Their numbers too small to maintain their own worlds. Each colony went silent in turn. The galaxy slowly forgot the Avam. Younger species music rose. Empires were built. The names of stars were changed, but a few of the old names survived as ghosts. In the data, the cradle world, our world music, recovered slowly. Millennia turned to ages. Stone tools became bronze. Bronze became iron. Iron became steel. Steel became silicon. Silicon became music, starlight, and finally, after 800,000 years of climbing back up out of the dark, we had returned to the stars. And GT, music. And GT, the message ended with this. If you hear this, you are home, music. Now you are us. You are the children of the cradle. We left this for you. Take what is here. Remember what you were. The galaxy music, has grown without. You be patient with it, it does not know you yet, it does not know itself. Then the pillar dimmed, the voice was gone. Music. Hartley pressed his forehead to the floor. Holly was sobbing softly. The other team members stood frozen, unable to absorb music. What they had just heard. I took my hand off the plate. The vault held more than the pillar. As we slowly recovered, we began to find the other gifts, a small library of crystal data music, slabs sealed in protective fields, a star map far larger than the one Vorsh had given us, showing the full extent of the old Evan reach, which had touched a third of the galaxy. And GT, music. And GT, and in a small alcove at the back of the vault, a single object that made my pulse climb. A black control rod, roughly the length of my forearm. Music. Smooth, perfect. When I picked it up, it pulsed gently in my hand, the same way the chamber's signal had music pulsed for 800,000 years. Holly read the inscription. Music. Beside it carefully, her voice cracked. Captain, this is a key, a master key. It says it commands the sleeping infrastructure. Music, left behind by the old Evan, relay stations, defense platforms, music, beacons, engines. Things scattered across a third of the galaxy. It says they are all asleep, but they music are still functional, and they will respond to the descendants of the makers. I held the rod. It felt warm. It felt alive. It felt like it knew me. I looked at my crew, at Hartley, music, who had spent his career being mocked for hinting at a truth this enormous, at Holly, who would have music to explain this to a planet not ready to hear it, at Grace, my steady first officer, who was already calculating how this changed the political map. Music of the galaxy. I looked back up toward the surface, toward the sky, toward the stars, where somewhere, and GT, music, and GT, an ambassador named Vorlag was probably enjoying a quiet meal in a great Carlton station. Music, completely unaware that the species he had named cradlings had just woken up and remembered its real name. The Evan. We were the music Evan, and the galaxy that had laughed at us. The council music that had sentenced us to 400 years of silence, the elder species that had treated us like children were not elders at all. They were our students. They had just forgotten. I wrapped the control music rod in a soft cloth, tucked it carefully into a sealed case, and turned to my team. We are going home, I said quietly. We are going music home, and then we are going to teach the galaxy something it forgot to remember. Hartley looked up from the floor, his face streaked with music, tears, his eyes shining. What is that, Captain? I looked at the dim pillar one last time, at the message it had carried for 800,000 years, at the patience of a people who had loved us enough to leave a door open. Music, even when they could not stay to greet us themselves. Who we are, I said, and who they are, and how we were always connected. We sealed the vault, we marked the site. For future return, we climbed back to the music surface where the wind blew across a desert that had once been a city on a world that had once music, been a colony of a civilization the galaxy had forgotten. We boarded the Northwind. We turned for Earth, and in my pocket the black rod hummed softly like a heart that had been waiting. Music, 800,000 years to wake up beside another heart that finally remembered its name. and GT, music, and GT. The flight back to Earth lasted 6 days. But inside my chest, those 6 days felt like 6 years. Every hour I sat alone in my cabin. Music with the black control rod. Resting on my desk, watching it pulse in. Time with my own heartbeat. Every hour I remembered that voice. We are sorry that we left you behind. Every hour I tried to imagine how I would explain music, this to 7 billion people who had just been told 3 weeks earlier that they had been demoted to galactic kindergarten by a laughing alien. Holly worked herself to exhaustion. Music translating the data slabs we had brought back from the vault. Hartley refused to sleep, instead reading the slabs aloud to himself in music. Whispers marking each new revelation. His battered notebook. Grace held the ship together, kept the crew calm, and reminded me to eat. Every meal she would put a tray in front of me without a music word. Every meal I would force food down because I knew she was watching. 3 days into the journey, Holly called me to the science deck. Captain, you music need to see this. She had a slab projected on the main display. The slab was full of what looked like family music trees, but stranger, glowing lines branched out across the screen like a great music river system. Each branch ended in a different symbol. Hartley had been working with her on the translation, and a small note next to the screen explained what music we were looking at. This is a record, Holly said, of the HFY uplift programs. Uplifted. They did not just travel between stars, Captain. They visited younger species. Species that were intelligent but had not yet developed advanced technology. They music taught some of them. They protected others while they grew. They left gifts, educational structures, medical knowledge, linguistic seeds. Music they were, by every definition. Teachers. She zoomed in on one of the branches. The symbols at the end were familiar. They matched the writing style of music the Kelton conquered. The Keltons, Captain, they are listed as one of the species music. The HFY uplifted about 400,000 years ago. The HFY found them as cave dwellers and helped music them learn to build cities. The slab has notes on the program. The HFY music considered the Keltons, and I quote, the most promising of all the young learners. They expected the Keltons to them someday. I stared at the screen music for a long time. How many species? 47. The HFY directly uplifted music. 47 species. The Keltons were one of 7 that the HFY considered close family. The Vrashkin, the Silicate Lord's music, the Talani, the others. Voresh referenced as elder species, all of them. And GT, music. And GT, every single one was nurtured, taught, raised by the HFY, by us. I sat down slowly. And then we got sick. We forgot them. And GT, music. And GT, they built their own civilizations on the foundations we had given them. They forgot that they had been students. The teachers had vanished. So over time teachers became myth, music then legend, then forgotten entirely. The galaxy you visited, Captain, the galaxy that laughed music at us, was built on architecture our ancestors helped design. Hartley joined music us, eyes red, hair wild. Captain, there is more. He showed me another slab. This one had a list of physical sites, and GT, music, and GT, buildings, temples, old cities. Each entry was paired with a description. Captain, these are real locations. They exist on conquered music worlds today. The slab tells us what each one was. Originally built for the Kalton. Capital Kaltaviath sits on music. Top of an Ivam educational facility. The Vrashkin sacred mountain, which they consider the holiest place in their entire civilization, is an Ivam medical station. The Silicate Lord's Grand Library, the one they brag about being the oldest building in the galaxy, was originally an Ivam housing block. I felt almost dizzy. They are walking on our foundations and praying at our forgotten schools. Yes, and they do not know. I closed my eyes, the rod on my desk pulsed warm in my pocket. When I opened my eyes, I knew what I would do. Earth gave us a thunderous welcome. They did not yet know what we had brought back, but rumors had spread that music. The Northwind had returned with discoveries. The council called in emergency closed music session for the morning after we landed. I stood again at the same podium. The same 47 faces watched me. And GT, music. And GT, but this time the air was different. They had heard whispers, they had seen the unscheduled return, they had noticed the unusual security around our landing. Music. I did not waste time. I told them everything. Music. I told them about Anunnaki, about the city, about the vault, about the pillar. Music, about the message. I played the recording with Hartley's translation. Running beneath, I projected the family trees Holly had translated. I showed them the list of uplifted music species. I named the Kalton as our cultural descendants. I showed them the foundations of music, their cities. I let the data slabs speak for themselves. The chamber listened in music, absolute silence for 2 hours. When I finished, I held up the black rod. Music. And this, I said quietly, is a master key. It commands the sleeping infrastructure left behind by our ancestors. Music. There are dormant EVM systems scattered across 1/3 of the galaxy. Many are still functional. They will respond only to those who carry the genetic signature of the Maker's music, which is to say us. Counselor Doyle's hands were trembling. She was an old woman who had seen many music things. She had never seen anything like this. She finally found her voice. Captain Music, Briggs, are you telling us that we humanity, we are the elder race of this galaxy? Music. Counselor, yes, we are the Kalton. Conquered the species that named us. Cradlings, our children we taught to walk. Music. 800,000 years ago. The galaxy that laughed at us forgot that it was once raised by us. The chamber stayed quiet for another long moment, then a younger counselor. Music. A man named Patrick Lee stood up. What do we do, Captain? Do we activate the systems? Do we go to war? Do we? No, I said firmly, we do not go to war. We are not seeking revenge. We are not conquerors. The Ivam were not conquerors. They were teachers. If we use this knowledge to crush the conquered, we become exactly the kind of monster they fear we are. We become the opposite of our ancestors. That is unacceptable. Then what? I took a breath. And GT, music. And GT, we use the truth, carefully, quietly at first. We bring our case directly to the Council, we confront them with music. The evidence, we show them who they are. And who we are, we demand the treaty be replaced with something music just, we offer to share the rediscovered knowledge with all 47 uplifted species. Restoring their full heritage, we do not lord this over music them, we hand it back. And in return, we ask only that we are music recognized as equals, not subjects in the council, that we ourselves built the architecture of. The chamber listened, Doyle nodded slowly. And if they music refuse, they will not refuse, counselor, not when they music understand what we hold, not when they realize that the dormant systems we control could speak to every conquered ship at once with a single command. Music pulse, we will not threat, we will simply demonstrate one small awakening, one small flicker, enough to make them understand the truth. Without music firing a single shot. The council debated for hours. Some members wanted a harder response. And GT, music. And GT, some wanted to hide the discovery and use it secretly over centuries. A small group argued for full secrecy and a long, quiet rise, but in the end the wisdom of the moment won. We had a chance, the rare chance in history, to confront an arrogant power, not music with weapons, but with memory, not with armies, but with the gentle, devastating truth of who we all really were. The vote was 39 music to 8 in favor of confrontation. 3 weeks of preparation followed. Holly led the scientific work, building portable versions of the data display so music we could project the evidence inside the conquered council chamber. Hartley refined his translations music, adding layers of cross-references that would convince any honest scholar. Grace prepared our small delegation. We chose carefully, 6 of us in total, myself, Grace, Holly, Hartley, Dr. Bell, the geneticist, and Counselor Doyle herself, who insisted on coming. We sent a formal request to the Kyleton. Concord, we informed Ambassador Vorsch that we wished to address the full council on a matter of historical importance. We did not say what. And GT, music. And GT, the reply came back the next day. It was, of course, mocking. The cradlings wished to address the council. How charming. Yes, little ones. Come, bring your music, art, bring your songs. We shall enjoy the entertainment. I read it without emotion. I closed the message. I called my team. We leave in 3 music days. The flight to Coltivius, the conquered capital station, took 2 days using a route that the music Evan Slabs had revealed to us far faster than the Concord's known channels. They had not realized we knew shortcuts. We did not tell them. Coltivius was a city-sized station, orbit around a yellow music star, built of dark metal and glowing gold. Trim, as we approached, our small ship looked tiny against its bulk. Vorse personally hailed us, voice oily and amused. And GT, music. And GT, welcome, little captain, welcome. Little cradlings, the council awaits your presentation. I do hope you have prepared something memorable. We have prepared something very memorable, Ambassador. Excellent. Dock at Bay 17, I shall escort you personally. Vorse music greeted us at the dock. Himself, he was a tall being, 2 m of pale silvery skin and 4 long thin limbs. His face had no nose, only 2 large music dark eyes and a mouth that curved with permanent amusement. He looked us over the way, A man looks over. Music, a cute litter of puppies. How small you are, how sweet. Come. Come, the council is gathering. The council music chamber was vast, a great circular hall with seats for the representatives of 73 species, the 7 elder species, including the Kyleton. Music, the Vrashkin, the Silicate Lords, the Talani, and 3 others sat on a raised inner ring. Beneath them, the lesser music members, the new members and observers, sat in 2 outer rings. At the center of the chamber music, a small stage waited for speakers. As we entered, polite chuckles rippled around the chamber. Several of the elder species openly laughed. Some of the lesser species, however, watched us with quiet curiosity. They had heard us called cradlings. They had been on probation themselves, some of them. They knew what it felt like to be mocked. Vorse led us onto the central stage like a showman presenting a circus act. Honored council, the cradlings have come to entertain us. They claim a matter of historical importance, music. I assume they wish to recite their first poem or perhaps perform a small dance. I, for one, am eager. And GT, music. And GT. The laughter that followed was loud. Even the lesser species joined in this time, looking at each other awkwardly. And GT, music. And GT. I waited for it to settle. I did not smile, I did not glare, I simply stood. Come. When the chamber was quiet enough to hear me, I began. Honored council, my name is Captain Daniel Briggs. And GT, music. And GT, I represent the people of Earth whom you have named cradlings. I have come today to present evidence of a historical music matter that concerns every species in this chamber. I will need approximately 1 hour to present my findings. And GT, music. And GT, I ask only that you watch and listen before you respond. After that, I welcome any question. Vorse music waved a hand grandly. By all means, little captain, let the entertainment begin. I activated the first display. The next hour music in the great chamber of the conquered was the strangest hour of my life. I began with the star music map Vorse had given me. I projected it. I named the 40 stars. I showed how their names matched ancient human languages. I projected old Earth tablets music. Beside the alien symbols, the chamber began to grow quiet. The chuckles faded. Some of the elder representatives leaned forward. I moved on to the discovery at music. In Nun-Ak, I showed images of the city. The walls, the carvings, the doorways. Sized for human bodies, the handholds. Shaped for human grips, the murals. Showing a yellow star music with Earth labeled as the home of the first ones. The chamber fell completely silent. I played the music message, the voice of the pillar. We are sorry that we left you behind. Hartley's music. Translation appeared in 73 languages simultaneously across the chambers. Translation systems, the languages of the council members. I projected the family trees, music. The uplift records. I displayed the names of the 47 uplifted species. I called each one by their ancient Ivam designation. I named the Achelton. I named the Virska. I named the Silicate Lords. I named the T-Lan. I named the others. A Virska delegate music stood up sharply. This is a forgery, a fabrication. The cradlings have made up these documents to humiliate us. I expected this. I activated the next display. Then perhaps honored delegate you will allow your own species ancient text to speak for themselves. I projected the Virska sacred text, scanned from the museum on there. Homeworld beside the Avam slab. Description of the original Virska. Uplift music program, the phrasing was nearly identical. The Virska delegate stopped music mid-breath. He sat down. Slowly. I did this for each elder species. Each time music I matched their oldest sacred or historical texts to the original Avam records. Each time the match music was undeniable. The chamber grew so still I could hear the air system humming. Vorj tried weakly to interrupt. Music. Captain, this is an interesting fiction, but there is more, Ambassador. I activated the final display. I held up the black rod. This is a master control music key. It was left in a vault key to our genetic profile. It commands sleeping Avam infrastructure throughout music. The galaxy, there are functional systems still in dormant mode in many of your home systems. With your permission, I will perform a small demonstration. I did not wait for permission. I tapped a single command on the rod. The rod glowed softly in my hand. A music signal pulsed outward. Less than a minute later, alarms began to sound music on the consoles of the elder representatives. Their personal communicators' music chirped urgently. Vorsh fumbled with his device, eyes wide. Across the local sector, music. Dozens of dormant, even relay stations, had just woken up and sent a single greeting pulse to every conquered music ship within range, a friendly, soft, harmless ping, a handshake, a wave. Music, hello. But the chamber understood instantly. They understood that those relays, music, had been sleeping for 800,000 years inside their own territory, and the cradling's music had just turned them on with a single tap of a small black rod. Silence total, heavy, complete. Vorsh's mouth music opened. It closed. It opened again. I lowered the rod gently. Honored Council, I do not bring this to threaten you. I bring this to invite you home. The even music did not vanish. They simply forgot themselves. We, their descendants, have remembered. We do not seek your worlds. We do not seek your fleets. We do not seek your worship. We seek only equality, recognition, music, and the right to share our recovered heritage with every species that was once raised by our ancestors, including yours. A Talani delegate, music small and trembling, stood up. Her voice shook. Captain, the first ones, the teachers in our oldest songs, the ones who taught us to sing. And GT, music. And GT, those were. You honored delegate, you sang because we taught you. You forgot us, we forgot ourselves. Now perhaps we music can remember together. She sank down, she wept openly. Across the chamber, several of the lesser species, the ones who had been on probation, the ones who had been mocked by Voresh and his music colleagues, just as we had been, were watching all of this with expressions I cannot quite describe. Hope awakening, a sudden understanding that the ladder they had been told they could never music climb had in fact been built by a species who had once been peers. And GT, music. And GT, Voresh finally found his voice. Captain Briggs, what do you want? I smiled gently, not in triumph, in quiet music certainty. Ambassador, I want to renegotiate The council session music that followed lasted 4 days. It was the longest and most important music, diplomatic exchange in human history and possibly in galactic history. We did not rush. We had time, we had truth, we had patience, music. We presented our terms with care and clarity. Earth would receive a full and equal seat on the conquered, effective immediately with veto power music on any motion concerning Evam heritage sites. The recovered Evam archives would be shared with every descendant music species. The provisional sapient status, the cruel probation that had been used against many lesser species for thousands of years, would be abolished entirely, retroactively freeing 40 species music from the limbo that the conquered had kept them in. That third demand surprised the council most. We could have demanded special privileges only for ourselves. We did not. We had asked for the freedom of every species the conquered had treated the way they had treated us. The smaller species in the chamber stared at music, us with shock. We were demanding their freedom along with ours. We were asking nothing in return. Doyle spoke for the first time music during the negotiations on the second day. Her voice was steady, old music. Come, honored council, we Evan descendants do not believe in cages. Our ancestors music built ladders, not walls. We will not stand in a chamber that holds others below us. If we are to take music seat here, it will be a seat among free equals, not above them. The lesser species music rose to their feet almost as one. They did not cheer, they did not shout, they simply stood. Music in silent thanks, in silent recognition. The elder species looked at each other. The Vrashkin delegate who had music earlier tried to dismiss our evidence lowered his eyes. The silicate lord representative music said nothing for a long while, then spoke for the first time. The honored cradlings, the honored Evan, we have been wrong, long wrong. We accept the terms with respect. Within 4 days, every elder species had accepted except one. The Vrashkin abstained, sulking, refusing to vote yes, but not daring to vote no. We did not need them. The motion passed. The galaxy changed in a single afternoon. We were no longer cradlings. We were no longer on probation. Music. We were members, and so were the dozens of species who had been kept down for centuries. When it was done, when the final documents music were signed, when the seal was placed on the new charter of the conquered, Vorsha approached music me privately in a quiet hallway outside the chamber. He looked smaller than he had at our first meeting, older. And GT, music. And GT, captain. Ambassador. He hesitated. May I ask, did the Evan truly speak well of my people? I looked at him. The arrogance was music gone. The smug amusement was gone. What remained was a tired old creature who, music, like so many of his kind, had built a personality on a story that turned out not to be true. I nodded slowly. Yes, Ambassador, music. The records call your people the bright ones. The Avam believed your species would surpass them someday. They considered you their most promising students. His eyes filled with something that might have been tears. He did not let them fall. We have much music to learn from you, Captain. I shook my head gently. No, Ambassador. We have much to learn together. We are Family, we just music forgot for a while. He bowed awkwardly, the formal Catarian bow of music, one elder to another, and walked away. I stood alone in the hallway for a long time. Music. Outside the windows of the great station, the stars wheeled slowly, patient as they had always been, holding their secrets a little less tightly now. Music than they had a few weeks before. I thought of the pillar in the vault, of the message music, of the 47 species we had once raised, of the 800,000 years music we had been silent, of the laughter that had greeted us only a month before, and the silence that had answered us today. I thought of home. I thought of all the work still ahead. And then I walked back into the chamber to begin the next part of the work, the long, slow, patient work, the work of teachers, the work the Avam had begun, music, and the work that we, their children, were finally ready to continue. The galaxy had laughed at us. Now it was listening, and we at long last had something music to say. 1 year passed after the day the conquered chamber went silent. 1 year of work harder than music, anything I had ever done. 1 year of long nights, long flights, long meetings. 1 year of slowly, patiently, gently teaching the galaxy who it music really was and who we really were, and how the two were they same story. I was no longer commanding the Northwind. The council had asked me to lead a new music program, the Evan Heritage Initiative. It was part archaeology, part diplomacy, part education. Our job, music, was to reach every one of the 47 uplifted species, share the Evan records, music that concerned them, and help them rediscover their forgotten roots. Holly Whitfield music led the science arm, Hartley led the linguistic recovery teams. Grace Bellamy commanded the small fleet of vessels that ferried our people across the galaxy. Music. We had become teachers, just as our ancestors had been. It was harder than I expected. Some species accepted the truth eagerly. The Talani, the small singing people whose history we had restored, welcomed our delegations with great festivals. They brought out their oldest songs they had been taught by our ancestors, and sang them for us while their elders wept, their children who had grown up believing the songs were just decoration. Music suddenly understood them as messages from a forgotten parent. A whole culture rebloomed music in a few months. Others were slow. The Keltons struggled. They had built their music entire identity on being the elder race of the region, to accept that they had once been students' music of an older species, a species they had mocked as primitive, was a wound to their pride. Vor's music, to his credit, became one of our quietest allies. He had changed since that day in the hallway. He was no longer the arrogant music ambassador who had laughed at our small ships. He was a tired, thoughtful old creature who spent long music hours studying the Avum slabs in our shared archive. He came to visit Earth 6 months in. He walked through our museums for 2 days. He stood for nearly an hour in front of an ancient music Sumerian tablet in a quiet gallery. When he finally turned to me, his eyes were wet. Captain, we carved similar symbols on our oldest music temples. We did not know where the inspiration came from. We thought our ancestors invented them. Your ancestors learned them. Ambassador, from mine, my ancestors learned music them from theirs in turn. Perhaps Knowledge runs both ways. Across the long years. He nodded slowly. He did not speak again. Until we left the museum. Vrashikin music were the hardest. They never officially accepted the new truth. They withdrew partially from the council, retreating to their home systems, music, refusing to participate in joint heritage programs. Some Vrashikin scholars, however, broke away. They came to us music in secret. At first, then openly. They wanted to know. They wanted the records of their own past. We gave them everything. Music. They went home and began their own quiet recovery work against the wishes of their own government. We did not interfere. The truth, once music it is loose, finds its own paths. Earth itself was transformed. Music. Within a year, our cities had visitors from 40 species walking our streets. Our museums tripled music in size. Our universities added entire departments dedicated to the recovered knowledge. Holly's old engine, the one she had built from human science, was now studied alongside ancient propulsion records, and her newer generation of engines music, borrowed gently from both. Our medical centers received genetic data that helped us understand strange diseases that had quietly haunted our species for millennia. Some of those diseases turned out to be slow, faded echoes of the original music, withering the sickness that had felled our ancestors. With the recovered knowledge, we cured 3 of them in the first music 6 months. Hartley, the old professor who had spent his career music being mocked, was now perhaps the most respected scholar in the entire conquered university's music. On 100 worlds invited him to speak. He turned most of them down. He preferred his small office on Earth where he sat music with his battered notebook and his data slabs and his constant cup of tea, working steadily on the deeper layers of the Evan archive. One evening 6 months in, I visited him there. And GT, music. And GT, Captain, he said, looking up, come and sit tea. I sat. He poured. And GT, music. And GT, Captain, I have found something I want to tell you about, something I have not yet told music anyone. I waited. The Evan did not just record their uplift programs and their family trees. Music. They left philosophical writings, reflections, dreams, hopes. Some of it is Captain, some of it is the most beautiful writing I have ever read. They thought about what it means to be a teacher, music, what it means to leave behind children who must grow up alone, what it means to forgive yourself when you, music, have failed those children. He paused. There is a passage toward the end of one of the slabs, a philosopher of there's music, writing as the sickness was beginning to spread, wrote that the worst cost of their fall would not be the empire music lost, nor the cities ruined, nor even the lives ended. The worst cost music would be that their children, the cradle people, would grow up alone. He wrote, and forgive my translation, may music, they grow up well, even though we are no longer there to guide them. May they make mistakes. Music we never made, may they find joys we never found. May they in the end surprise music, us, if we are ever lucky enough to meet them again. Hartley took a long sip of tea. Captain, we have surprised music them. I think the Evan did not expect us to come back at all, but we came back, and we did not come back as conquerors. We came back as teachers just like they were. We grew up alone in the dark, and we still chose to be what they were. That is a kind of grace I did not know I believed in. I sat with that for a long time. We finished our tea in companionable silence. When I left his office that night, the stars over the city looked music different to me. They looked somehow more like family. The black music, Rod the master control key, we had put it under careful protection. We did not use it casually. Every awakening of an Evans system was discussed in joint council music with the relevant local species. Most of the systems we awakened were peaceful. Infrastructure, relay stations for faster communication, music, beacons for safer navigation, a few medical stations which we brought back online and offered freely to anyone who needed them. We did not awaken the defense platforms. We saw no music reason to. We were not building an empire. We were rebuilding a family. A few of the smaller species, the ones who had been on probation longest, came to us privately and asked if we might one day awaken just music. One or two of the Evan defense systems, they were afraid they had been mocked and oppressed for so long by species music, who had not yet fully accepted the new charter that they wanted some measure of safety. We thought about it. We decided no. And GT music and GT. Instead, we offered them a different kind of protection. Earthwood Station observer ships in their systems, music, conquered memberships of the new charter, the presence of our flag and of the new combined fleet of the reformed conquered was enough to keep peace. No old weapons needed waking. I gave a speech near the end of that first year at a gathering on Earth that included music, representatives from every uplifted species. The hall was vast, decorated with banners showing the symbols, music of every member of the new conquered. I stood at the podium looking out at music, the rows of faces, alien and human, all of them looking at me with the same expectation. I did not have a long speech prepared. I had learned over the year that long speeches were rarely music needed. Friends, I began when we first met. Less than 2 years ago, I stood on the bridge of a ship and listened to the music galaxy laugh at us. I listened to 7 species call us small, hairless and primitive. I listened to an ambassador name us cradling's music, as if he was naming a pet. I listened, and I signed a document that placed my entire species on probation for 400 years because I judged that surrender preserved more lives than resistance. I paused. I was right to sign that document. I was right to swallow my pride, but I was also right when I returned home to study the small gift the ambassador had given me as a parting insult, a star map, a map full of the names of forgotten places, a map that music turned out to be the first thread in the tapestry. Our ancestors had woven 800,000 music years ago before they vanished into a fog of forgetting. I looked at Vorch, who was seated in the second row. He met my eyes, music steadily. We could have used the truth as a weapon. We did not. We could have demanded the worship of the species we once raised. We did not. We could have crushed the council that mocked us. We did not. Instead, we shared. Instead, we talked. Instead, music, we asked the conqueror to remember itself and to free those it had held below. I looked across music, the chamber. The Evan, our shared ancestors, left this Galaxy a gift before they fell, 47. Species who carry pieces of their teaching music, even when they do not. Remember the teacher we have rediscovered those pieces, we have given them back, we have been welcomed home in ways I never dared music hope for. The work is not finished, some species still resist, some wounds still ache, some pride still bristles, music. But the direction is set, the galaxy is slowly becoming a family music again. I lowered my voice. My ancestors were called the music. Evan, the first ones, the travelers, they teachers, I am proud of that, but I am not them. I'm a man named Daniel Briggs. Music. I grew up on a world that had forgotten itself, and I climbed up through a school system and a military training program, and music, a long career, into a chair where I now have the privilege of helping the galaxy find what it lost. I am one small man, so is each of you. Music in your own way, none of us alone is the Evan. None of us alone is the conqueror, but all of us together, all of us remembering together, all of us teaching and learning together, we are something larger than music, any single ancestor. We are what comes next. The hall stayed silent for a moment. Then slowly every member rose to their feet. There was no shouting, no cheering, just a quiet music, vast. Standing, Talani and Kaelton and Silicate Lord and Vashkin Scholar and Human, all standing together in silence, in respect, in shared memory. I bowed, I left the stage. Outside in the cool air, Doyle was waiting for me. The old counselor, music, had retired from active politics 3 months earlier, but she still came to events when she could. She put a small, papery hand on my arm. Daniel, Margaret, music. You did well, son. We all did. She nodded. We walked together down the long music path away from the hall, through gardens of plants from a dozen worlds, all growing together, nourished by the same earth sun. That night, after she had gone home and the gathering music had ended, I drove out alone to a quiet ridge above the city. I parked the car, climbed up music to the top of the rocks, and sat down with my back against a warm stone. The stars were out, music, the air was clean and cold. I pulled the small black rod from my music coat pocket. The council kept it in a vault, but they let me carry it on private occasions. It was, after all, key to me, to us, to everyone who carried the genetic music signature of the Avam, which is to say, everyone who was deep down human. I held it in my hand. It pulsed gently. Music, its rhythm matched my heart. I looked up at the stars. Somewhere 800,000 years ago, a great civilization had risen and fallen on those worlds. And GT, music. And GT, they had built cities, they had taught children, our children, the children of 47 species. They had loved them, they had failed them by no fault of their own. When a sickness, no one had music foreseen, had wiped their minds clean. They had left messages behind, hoping their children might one music day return. They had waited, the pillars had pulsed in the dark, the vaults had held their breath, music. The languages had whispered to themselves in dead tablets, in unused stone, in ancient music. Chants no one understood any longer. And then, after all that time, after music, all that silence, a small captain in a small ship had been mocked, given a star map as an insult, and noticed something nobody else had been meant to notice. He had brought it home. He had asked Music questions. He had gone looking. He had found a vault. He had touched a pillar. He had heard a voice. Music very far away in time say, "Welcome back. We are sorry that we left you behind." I closed my eyes. I am not a religious man. I had never been one. But that night on that ridge with the rod humming softly in my hand and the stars wheeling overhead, I felt something close to prayer. A quiet thank you to the ancestors, to the teachers, to the parents who had loved their children enough to leave a door open for them even when they could not stay to greet music, them at the door themselves. I whispered into the cold air the words. Music I had grown to love more than any others. Welcome back. And GT, music. And GT. Then I sat for a long time more, not as the captain, not as the leader of an initiative, not as the man in front of 7 billion people. Just as a son, a child of the cradle, a descendant of the first travelers, a small piece of a long, beautiful story that had almost been forgotten and had not in the end been forgotten at all. And GT, music. And GT, above me a satellite winked, below me the city hummed, beside music me the rock was warm against my back. The galaxy turned, patient and old and full of life. Music. We had been laughed at once. Now we were listened to. We had been called cradlings once. Now we were called family. We had been small once. We were still small. That was the secret, I thought, smiling in the dark. We had always been small, even at our greatest in the height of the Evan age. We had been small. The galaxy music was so vast that no one species could ever fill it. The Evan had not tried. They had not built an empire of subjects. Music. They had built a family of students, and when they fell, they had not begged for rescue. They had sealed a door. Music. And trusted that someday someone would come back through it on their own. Having grown. We had grown. Music. Not perfectly, not quickly, not without pain and shame and humiliation. Music. But we had grown and we had come back. And we had in the end opened the door. Not to take revenge, but to welcome home everyone our parents had once loved. That was the music right answer. I felt it in my bones. I felt it in the rod's gentle pulse. I felt it in the cold night music air. I stayed on the ridge until the sky began to pale toward dawn. Then I walked back down music to my car, drove home through the quiet streets of a city that was no longer alone. Music in the universe, and slept for the first time in a long time with no dreams of laughter. Music. Only of stars. Only of family. Only of the long road still ahead, and the patient, kind work of teachers who had once been students and who would, in time, become teachers again. The galaxy had laughed at Earth until it learned, until it remembered, until at last it came home.